Hello, my name is Sam, and welcome to another video talking about Tapforms 5 for iOS and Mac. We're back in the forums again today with a data processing question. And this was kind of an interesting one where when you come to Tapforms, sometimes you have data that you already have pre-formatted in a different system. And when you do that, you want to be able to split things apart. Now, Brendan's got this pretty cool generic solution around using the split, working through each of the lines, and then basically finding the field that matches using the get field name function. And if it exists, setting that value and incrementing the index. That's pretty cool. And it's a really great generic way of doing things. However, Emil sort of shared some more information, example sort of why that wouldn't work, and let's get down to those examples. And we can see here that the data is a little more structured. Now, he uploaded a screenshot of roughly what the note field looks like, where it's like 1, 2 on their own lines, but 3, 4, and 5 are actually on the same line. Field 6, 7, and 8 are on a second line, and then 9 and 10 are also on a third line. So within 5 lines of text, we've got 10 fields. And then we've got some extra spacing fields and then more spacing. So that's kind of challenging because we have to go and process that. But I already replied and threw in the hat with threw in my hat with an example here using that. Now, what we're going to do in this video is we're going to recreate this and sort of do some of the behind the scenes. I'm actually going to model the forms themselves because when I was developing the sample that you can see here, we just used a fixed input. We used fake field IDs. We're going to actually make it work in this video and get that started. So to begin with, we need a sort of a high level form. This looks to be like an aircraft form, so I'm going to call it aircraft. There appears to be, when we're looking at the sample data, there's a type and a serial number, so we'll pull that across as serial number. I assume this is a serial number, and we'll do one more for type. And so this is sn.zx334, and it's a Lancaster 1. And we need one more field, which is going to be our notes field. And inside of it, we're going to do our plain text note. Why did that not? Inside of that, we're going to put in our sample data. So we're going to copy this one. We could copy any of them one. But we'll copy this from the original example. We'll hit paste. One of the reasons to use a plain text note here is it strips out any of the formatting. So we've got the bold in that. That's not going to really matter to us when we get into the scripting, because scripting only sees the plain text. It doesn't see like the bold or anything like that through how it works. So we've got our aircraft, and let's pull that down to uncategorized for the moment. The link to form stuff, well, maybe it should live in there, but we'll see that. Okay, so we've got our base record, we've got a serial number, we've got a type, and we've got the notes field that has all of the information in it. Now, my next step here is actually not dissimilar to Brendan's step. The first step is, once we've got the note field, get the note field value, get the note, and then split the note. So let's go have a look at my sample. So we've got at the top here, we've got field names, which is a list of field names for each line, and we'll talk about that one a little later. We've got aircraft details, which is the fields for the aircraft line. We have our field map, and then we have our sample data. So let's keep going. And from Brendan's example, there was also this line index concept, so the line that we were processing, and we need to put the data somewhere temporarily, so we're going to use parse data for that. And then you can see here we're going to split the input. So let's go start creating a script field, and we'll do something similar. So what we're going to do is parse notes field. Sounds like a good name for a thing. I'm not going to use the function scaffolding. We don't need it for what we're doing here because we're just going to process everything and then output to the console. So the first thing we need to do is grab our notes field, get, and I'm going to rename this to const, let input equals record.get field value input. And then we're going to do let lines equals input.split /n, and then for let line of lines console.log line. Okay, let's talk about what we just did. We got the ID of the note field, so that's the Tapform's internal ID. We put it into a variable using record.getFieldValue with that should be note ID, and we already fixed the bug before we even started. We took that input and we split it on new lines. This will silently fail if the input is not set, which I think we're okay with, because realistically, if there's nothing in the notes field, it's going to do nothing, and that's really all it should do. If there is something there, then we're going to process them, and we're going to, for each line of lines, we're going to get that particular line of text. So let's hit run on that and see what that does. And we can see that basically it's re-output the input. So 02089422, 12 Squadron, RAF Detling. Wait, what was? Oh, we're not quite at the top. 12 Squadron, RAF Hawkinge, tire burst on landing. Okay, so that's printed out. So we've tested getting the data, processing it into different lines, and then re-outputting it. And this is important, right? Like, as you're developing scripts, one of the advice given to me years ago is, do a small change, do some work, and then test it. Make sure that it all works. Make sure that your environment is sane before you go off and do something more complicated and have to try to debug that. Start simple. So we've got the basics of our script here. Now, I mentioned here that I had these two extra variables, and we'll put them in here as well. And in fact, we'll put them after that or before that. In this code, we had it before let lines. You know what? Maybe we'll do that as well. Get the input there. So line index is going to be the line index that we're processing. Now, when we look at our sample data, we can see that the first line is a date of some variety. The second line looks to be a squadron. The third line has our three fields, so RAF Hawkinge, comma, tire burst on landing, and I'm assuming the last field is a damage percentage. The next line is our comma separated line, so we've got aircraft type, serial number. Also looks like there's some sort of extended edition thing here, so we'll process that out, and then the squadron colon. So as we process these lines, this will be 0, this will be 1, this will be 2, this will be 3, this will be 4, this will be an empty line, so that could be 5, or it could just be we skip that line. This will be 6, and then this line will potentially be 7, if I've counted correctly. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't count. So this will be 6, this will be 5, and then so on and so forth. We're counting at 0, and the reason for that is some of these lines 1-to-1 map. So the date 1-to-1 maps, the squadron 1-to-1 maps, the bomber accidents 1-to-1 maps, the comment 1-to-1 maps. Now, in the sample we're given, it looks like there might be 3 fields here, 1, 2, 3. So maybe that assumption isn't 100%, so we would have to retool a little. But for the sample data we're given, let's just fit for that and make sure that works. To do that, we're going to put basically this field names map in. And what this is going to be is a mapping for each of these items to a friendly field name. So we've got event date, squadron, location, aircraft, pilot, damage type, and comments, lining up with our sample data of can we fit that like that? We can. Event date, squadron, location information, aircraft information, pilot information, damage type, and then comments. So there's the mapping there. For the lines that are a one-to-one mapping, we'll do that, and then for the other lines, we will obviously work towards processing them. So first step is we're going to do some cleaning of our data. So let's grab this and we'll put that in. And we've done a couple of changes, so let's just hit save and let's hit run. Okay, so we've done the change. We've added this at the top. We've added the trim here. We've run it and it looks the same, which is good. We want that. The same is good. So what line.trim is going to do is trim removes any extra white space. So if there's a space at the start of the line, space at the end of the line, trim removes that white space for us automatically, so that we don't have to deal with it, and that doesn't leak into our fields. Now most of this data actually looks relatively clean. Like it doesn't look like there's any extra white spaces or anything like that. So this may be overkill. But the reason I include it is the next part is to ignore the empty lines, because we don't want to count them. In a later example, we might come back to this and do something special with the new lines, because they maybe have some meaning, because the first line is the start of this stanza, the second white blank line is the start of that stanza, and then the third blank line is the start of the end of the record. So we may wish to do something different with this if line length equals 0, but for the moment we're just going to ignore those lines, and the trim helps us where if there was a line that was just like a couple of spaces in it, that gets cleaned up here, and then line.length will equal 0. So let's run that, see what that's changed, and you'll notice that now there are no spaces as we go through. One other thing we're going to do here is increment the line index each time we go. So let's do that. And as we're going, let's put this above here. We're going to do a console.log on line index. And when we save that and run this, one change, one edit, we can see we start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, etc. Which is good, counting up, but we need it to reset once we get to 7. So let's grab this, which is if the line index becomes 7, then we're at the end of the stanza, and we need to reset that to be 0. So we'll put that bit of code in here. And now when we run it, we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's now split the lines up, and we have an index that maps back to each of those lines. So we've got that working, and we've validated that. The next thing we're going to do is handle the line that we're working on. And the way we're going to do that is with a switch statement. Now, the switch statement is sort of like an if statement, but instead of having if then else, if then else, if then else, switch statements give us the ability to specify multiple things that match. So if line index equals 0, 1, 5, or 6, then run this code. If line index equals 2, then run this code. If line index equals 3, then run this code. If line index equals 4, then run this code. And then if we didn't match anything, the default behavior is logger unknown line and our line in console log line index and line. So let's do that to get started. Make sure our indenting is correctamundo. And we should actually have a break at the end of this. It's not really necessary because default's the last option, but we'll put it in anyway. So let's save that. And now every line is printed with unknown line 0 and then a field, unknown line 1, then the line. So that's progress, right? That's the change we made. So let's copy this, and the reason that we do it structured this is these lines pass through 1 to 1, right? So line 0 is our date. We don't do anything to that, just 1 to 1 pass it. Line 2 or case 1, so line 2 index 1, line index 1 is 12th squadron. We do pass that along, like there's no commas or anything. When we get to here, case 2, we can see that there's commas and stuff, so we don't want to do anything with that. 3 and 4 are the same, and then when we get to 5 and 6, we're back to 1-to-1 mapping these fields, which is pretty cool. So we've got that in. We also need to add something in here, and we're going to borrow this, which is we want to log out our parsed object, right? And we're going to put this in after the line index equals 0, because what we want to do is start to see the data that we're parsing and making sure that it lines up in the fields that we expect it to line up in. So we're using console.log here, but console.log on an object just says object, and it's not particularly helpful. So what we do is we add an additional JSON.stringify, which takes this object, turns it into JSON JavaScript object notation, and that lets us sort of see what it is. It's still pretty debuggery, if you will. Like it's not the world's most friendly format, but we can see that now we've processed the event date as this. We've processed squadron as 12th squadron. Damage type is this bomber accidents. Comments is no comment. And we've got, you know, then unknown line 2 as we go back and we process the next object. So we can see that we're starting to build this structure up, this sort of map of the field and its value. So let's keep going with case number 2. Now, case number 2 is a fun one, and we'll just paste this in here because it's slightly easier to look at. The damage line is this case 2 line, so it's this RAF Hawkinge tire burst on landing 20%, and that's essentially field 1, field 2, field 3. It's actually, I think, field 2, 3, 4. So let's parse out that. Now, what we're doing here with this line.match is what's called a regular expression. And regular expressions in JavaScript are denoted by their slashes. So if you see something with just, it's not quoted as a string, like this is quoted with as a string, but something wrapped in slashes like this denotes that it's a regular expression. And JavaScript obviously has built-in support for regular expressions, which is pretty cool. So what we're doing here is looking at this line. Again, remember that's RAF Hawkinge tire burst on landing, and we're checking to see if it matches this regular expression. Now, if you're new to regular expressions, this can sort of look like a mess, and so what we're going to use here is, there we go, regular expressions 101 or regex 101 to help us debug this regular expression. And this tool is wonderful for if you're trying to learn how to use regular expressions and try to pick up the bits and pieces. So let's get started with what we wrote here, which is we want to match everything up to that first comma. Now, we have two ways of doing it. One is to do what's called a greedy match of everything, and then have the regular expression engine sort of backtrack and figure out where it should stop. But one of the things I actually really prefer to do in these situations is what we want to do is create a capture group. So we're going to create open a bracket here. We're going to use a square bracket to match a particular character. We're going to use the character, which means not, and we're going to say comma. So what I want you to do is match not a comma. We're going to use a square bracket to close out this character group, character match. I'm going to use star to mean 0 or more entries, which is not the greatest form. Maybe we should use a plus or something like that. And then we're going to close the bracket. And so essentially what this is saying is match a single character not present in the set, which is a literal comma. And we can see here that match 1 is that, and we don't have any other entries yet. So we've matched RAF Hawkinge up to this comma. Now, and that's it already extracted as a group, so that's good. We want to match the comma, because what we're going to do this time is a greedy search. And the reason for that is I'm not quite sure what this tire burst on landing thing will always be. But it looks like there is always a literal bracket here, or parentheses, that is that. Now, because we used the parentheses before, the parentheses is the start of a capture group. But in this case, we need to use a literal one, so we put the backslash in to say ignore the next character. It has special meaning. We're then going to create a capture group, and that capture group is, we're just going to make that. So we did it in the example .star, but I think what we'll do is anything that's not the closing bracket multiple times, then the closing bracket for the capture group and the literal closing bracket. And actually we might copy that. I think that's a better one. Let's put that in here. But we can see now through the highlighting that group 1 is this airbase, is my guess, RAF Hawkinge. Group 2 that we're matching on is a description of what happened, so tire burst on landing. And now group 3 is just the 20%. And we can see on the right here, there's a bit of an explanation of it for us as well. But the match information is really useful in telling us we got all of that right. We don't have a comma anywhere. We don't have any extra spaces. And we extracted out the 20% without the brackets. So we've got all of the data out. Now, when that returns, we can see that it's going to return multiple entries. So what we do is we check to see if we got a match. And if we did get a match, we got more than two entries there, so we're looking for at least 3. And then we just match one across. So the first one, RAF Hawkinge, number 1 is the damage pieces. The second one, group 2, is the description. So we map that across. And then group 3 is this damage percentage, and we map this across. Now, the keener among you may have realized that there's missing a damage bracket 0. And damage pieces 0, the return for match, is actually going to be this one here, this first line, which is actually the entire string that matched. We don't actually need that, so we're going to ignore that. And that gets us the pieces 1, 2, 3 of that mapped across. So let's hit run on that. And we're down to just line 3 and 4. 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. We've got our event date, squadron, damage location now has RAF Hawkinge in it, damage description now has tire burst on landing, damage percentage has 20%, and then damage type and comments are the same as they were before. So we've processed that line, processed the string, and got the data out of it. So, moving back, let's have a look at case number 3. Now, case number 3 is a little simpler than case number 2 in that the aircraft line appears to have 2 or 3 entries split by a comma. Now, when we look at the sample data, we can see Lancaster, SN, ZX334, Lancaster 1, ZX334, BA minus. So that means that some of these entries have 2, some of them have 3, maybe some of them only just have 1. That seems odd. The military are fans of the serial numbers. So it's likely they're going to be 2, maybe 3. Now, to deal with this, we're going to do 2 things. First thing is we're going to split on the comma because it's comma separated. We're going to do that trim again, but we're going to use this time map, which is a JavaScript function that says for each entry in the array, so split gives us an array, run a command over it, in this case where the parameter is element or lm, and so we're going to do lm.trim, and that's going to give us these values but without the white space around them, which is going to be important because we split on the comma. This second field would have a space at the start, and this third field would have a space at the start. So the trim is useful for basically making sure that we get rid of that. Now, this references let aircraft index in aircraft pieces, and that's slightly different to what we did before, which was let line of lines. So the difference is that of gives us the value. So in lines of lines, it's this Lancaster 1. If we did let line in aircraft pieces, it would actually be the array index. So it'd be 0, 1, 2, 3. And maybe that's useful for us in this sort of a naive system. You could, if there was no like white spaces, use that to automatically figure out what your index offset is. But that's not the case here, so we can't use that sort of hack. We just process each line as we see it. The next piece we note about that is we have the parse data again, but we have the same aircraft details, aircraft index, similar to field names, line index, and we don't actually have that yet, so let's copy that in. Aircraft details. And the reason for this is this has the 3 fields, as I perceive it, aircraft type, so Lancaster, serial number, SN again, and then EXT for, or extended for what this BA minus thing is. And the reason we do this as an array is it lets us use this really cool syntax here, where basically we put the field name in this array, so aircraft type, aircraft SN, and then we use where the index of the comma is on this line to pull out the right value, so 0, 1, 2, and automatically push each of those pieces into, at a given index, into the right field name. So let's hit run on that, and we can see now we have aircraft type, we have aircraft SN. We don't have the aircraft EXT here because this entry only had the first 2, but the next one we can see we've got this aircraft EXT with BA minus. And that leaves us with one last line, our case 4, which appears to be the pilot with their rank and their name. It's same thing here, we're going to split on the space. In this case, we're mapping this to trim it. If there was multiple spaces, this might mess up, but fortunately for me, the data was relatively clean. And basically, because we're splitting this, we just one-to-one map the squadron leader to the rank, and Conran or Hewitt as the name. I'm assuming that's a family name of some variety. So let's just hit run on that. And now we can see that all of the data for each of the entries has been parsed, turned into friendly names. And that's sort of my first step at all of this stuff. Before I get too far along, get it into friendly names, get it into something I can debug. Because that means that I can do the second half, which is figure out how to map those to fields. Now, we have this field map here, and we'll copy this in now, but that refers to essentially a form that doesn't exist yet. And these will be all of the field IDs or the field names that's going to store each of these entries. But how are we going to do that? So let's go take a detour And we're going to create another form called aircraft events. And these are going to store each of these events, starting with event date. Then we've got squadron, we've got damage location, we've got damage description, damage percentage. Now I'm doing all of these as text fields. There is method in my madness, and some of that is like event date we could probably process and parse into an actual Tapforms date. But if there's a mistake with it and we try to format that and put that in, or if we try to pick on like the percentage and assume that it's a number, but maybe there's some bad data in there, that messes things up. So it's really easy for me to just make sure that everything is a text field, because I know that it's always going to give me the data back on the other end, and then I can do another pass, that should be pilot rank, to another pass to extract out values, make sure that if it's a percentage, everything's a number, and that all makes sense. But in this situation, what we're doing is the first pass of just processing everything, putting it into forms, making sure that we can get the data out, because we can always iteratively improve on this and capture all of our data. Now we've created the events form with all of the fields we need. So now we're going to go back to aircraft and create a link to form field. And inside of it, we're going to link it to aircraft events. We're going to make it a one-to-many. I'm not going to worry about the inverse relationship for this one, because mostly I want the table. We're going to put the table above the notes but below the main fields, because the note field is sort of there to be a data import, if you will, whereas this is going to be our processed events. So let's head back to our script, because what we need to do is copy over the field map here. So let's make this a little bigger, and what we're going to do is grab all of these things and copy their IDs and map them back to this field map here. So we've done event date, squadron, damage location, damage description, percentage, type, serial number, ext, pilot name, rank, pilot name, damage type, and comments. Okay, and we can delete that now. So what we've done here is we've copied in each of these IDs, and we do need one more ID for the field, and make that a constant as well. And so all of these map the friendly name that we've been generating back to the Tapforms internal ID. Now, I don't necessarily have to have done it this way. There's a couple of different ways that we could have done this, but for this one, we're going to have this sort of a field map so that it has our friendly name that we've been using to generate the data, and we can then map it back. And the way we're going to map it back is with another for loop. Now, one of the things we haven't been doing is resetting our parse data object. So, let's go do that as well. And the reason we want to do that is to make sure that if we have fields that exist in a previous record but not in the current one, that we reset this out so that it doesn't automatically carry over. And what we're going to do here is remove the comments. And what this line does is let new entry be record.add new record to field. The field is going to be this aircraft events field, which is actually our link to form field. So we're going to create a new record in this link to form field. When we do that via the scripting with this record.add new record to field method, is it automatically creates a link between our aircraft form and the new aircraft events record that we just created. And then we're going to go through all of the parsed data, and we're going to get the field name. So that's going to be like pilot rank, pilot name, using that in syntax again. And we're going to set the value of the new entry field, which we're going to look up in the field map. So this, when we go to field map, we're going to look for, let's pick on pilot rank. We're going to look for pilot rank in our list, and we're going to return this field ID so that Tapforms knows for set field value what form ID, form field ID we're using. And then we're going to go into our parsed data object and grab that field out of the field there. And then we're going to set it all up. One last thing before we run this is we need to make sure we save all of the changes. So when you call add new record to field, set field value, all of these sorts of commands that change the state of the records, you need to call save all changes, document.save all changes, form.save all changes, whichever one works for you. They both do the same thing. We have an error, which is, I think we have an extra bracket there. Yes, we do. Sweet. So we've run that. We've got it outputting all of the information again for us, which is good. And now when we hit save, we can see that, let's get rid of this so we can see the thing. We can see that we've got the event date, the squadron, and we can double click on that and see all of the fields filled in. It looks correct to us. Let's look at this one. This is the one where this was empty. So 20% Lancaster, we've got a serial number. Looks like we've parsed all of the data correctly. And then we've got that last one. So that's a bit of a long walkthrough, but a solid explanation of what we're developing, the process I generally go through to develop this sort of script. You can see that as I built it, it's not the same order that it ended up in. It didn't just emerge like this. You can see that each of the pieces sort of slowly came together to form this sort of coherent script that does what we need, creates the records and everything for us. Apologies for this one. It's a bit of a long one, but I thought it was important to be able to show that end-to-end process. If, however, you did like that, give me a thumbs up. If the long videos are not for you, that's okay. Give me a thumbs down. Let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions, post on the forum or post here on the comment section on YouTube. Helps with the algorithm and all that fun stuff as well. If these videos are interesting to you, hit subscribe so that you don't miss out on another one. Hit the bell so that you get a notification if you really like the channel. And I will see you on another video. Happy Tapformsing.